Well, g'day and welcome to the Detour. A little bit of a different episode tonight because our normal host, my sidekick Dan Jones, is crook. He's had to isolate, do the COVID test. He's coughing and spluttering. Hopefully, he hasn't got the dreaded COVID-19, but he isn't well, and he can just push buttons. So he's pushing the buttons. He's been pushing my buttons for years, but hopefully he bounces back for tomorrow's Detour edition. So with me, I've got Skye Mcgrory, Olympic gold medalist, one of our greatest ever six-day stars. Finished second in the Bay Classic. I mean, he's got they're right up there.
I won a couple. Right?
You did win a couple.
Races, yeah.
And has now become one of the really good famous sports directors or race directors around, but he's also become one of our leading television commentators and doing the Olympics with Phil Liggett. So, Scotty, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Now, for our international viewers and listeners, John, do you think they all know what crook means? Because that's such an Aussie term, isn't it? Dan's crook.
It is. Yes. They'd probably think he's a gangster, and they'll be
exactly.
right with that too.
No,
well, crook is sick.
Yes.
But I think most of our overseas listeners have gotten onto most of the Aussie slang over the time. But and we've got Whitey about to join us, and here he is. He was going to come in at 8 o'clock. Matty White, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Long transfer, 2-hour bus transfer to the start. We're here now, ready to go.
Ah, fantastic.
So you love a long transfer, mate, in the morning before a stage.
Yeah. At least we got a shorter one. We only got an hour after the finish, so quality time in the bus, that's for sure.
Just talking about Dan Jones being crook and or sick, as Scotty pointed out for the international listeners. But you've got a sick one in your team as well. Cam Meyer has been struggling for the last couple of days. How's he going?
Yeah, good. He's going to attempt to start today. So he's been sick for 2 days now, and we're hoping. Yesterday was the worst of it, but he wasn't super overnight, and the doctor's giving him the all okay to start today's stage. But it's going to be touch and go if he's going to be able to get through the stage. I think, depending on how quick this breakaway goes, because it's not an easy one to get through ill. But hopefully we can get him through today. Yesterday was an easier one to get him through. That's why people watching television saw him a lot on the back of the bunch yesterday. We didn't have a role for him, and he actually did a couple of bottle runs, but that's about it. We just wanted to keep him out of all the stress yesterday, and hopefully got a bit of recovery. Wasn't involved in that messy final, and if he can get through today, we've got another sprint stage tomorrow. So fingers crossed.
Talking about yesterday's stage, how did it pan out for the boys? I mean, I knew you had no real challenges other than just staying out of trouble, and there's the boys doing a good job staying out of trouble. That good photo there, good on you, Dan. Even though he's not with us, he's still pushing those buttons. Good on you, mate. But that last 20K was really, you told us that was the big challenge. The last 20K was really dangerous with road furniture, and it obviously was, because it's taken 3 bike riders down and 2 of them out of the bike race. How did the boys all handle that?
Good. Like we had to, or in modern cycling, our guys were holding position 110 kilometers from the finish. After 70K, we had the right-hand side of the road with 2 or 3 of our guys, and they had to hold that position as long as they could, and they did a really good job. Sorry, the boot's open in the car. I'm sitting right at the start area. If you hear the music behind us,
we're right, mate.
the
atmosphere.
The boys did a really good job with Chris Jules Jensen, especially, and Callum Scottson, holding that right side of the road there. And then in the final, it got, as you saw there, it got really, really messy. And Michael Hepburn did a stellar job guiding Simon through the traffic there and getting him to the line safe and sound.
Hey, Waddy, you mentioned Heppy there. In the coverage we saw after the finish, Heppy rode past Caleb Ewan and gave him a fist pump. There's still such a great camaraderie between Australians, regardless of what team they ride for. And of course, Caleb was with you only a couple of years ago. But it's great to see, isn't it? When Aussies do well, and Aussies abroad, when they're out of Australia and they're racing over there, everyone just seems to really understand and appreciate and respect each other's performances.
Oh, 100%. We all know coming from Australia in whatever sport you're doing that's not one of the locally based ones. We all respect the sacrifices and effort that we've all made to get whatever you've done in your career, and there is a very, very big mutual respect. And I think, Scotty, it's been around for a long time. I think even in our area of racing, I think we all had a lot of respect for each other, even the different pathways we took to turn professional and to do whatever we did on the track or the road. We all appreciated and had that respect of what it took to get to this level in international cycling.
One of the difference, Whitey, between our era and now is that we actually had probably a lot more time in stages to chat, catch up, and really just communicate. These days, mate, they're flat out from the start. Everyone's got a job. Every team's got a role to play. And I think am I right in saying there's perhaps a little bit less time for the riders from different teams to actually just have that banter and chat, as we did back in the day?
Yeah. I think the racing. Actually, I got sent a photo this morning from Matt Wilson. When we had 12 Australians at the Giro. And it was a photo that came up today on his cloud there, and he sent it through. And 12 of us hanging out in the start area at the Giro d'Italia. I think still to this day, I think it's the record Australians at the Giro. We have plenty of time at the start to chat, and even in the race, the Giro's once the break had gone, things would settle down. You could have a couple of hours to have a chit chat down the back, and racing has certainly changed, and it's a lot more stressful for these guys. And I think because of the information that people have got about how the stages, no one recon stages at the Giro 20 years ago. The locals might have had that knowledge, but no one else did. And but I think just the whole stress level in races has been amplified year in, year out. And these guys don't get too much of a chance to catch up with even their teammates, let alone other friends from other teams during the races these days.
Well, I was just going to hit you now with get your thoughts on that great stage finish of Caleb's yesterday. And I was going to say, I thought it was a bit it looked to me like a Robbie McEwen type sprint. But talking of the man, we've got Robbie McEwen in the chair, and here he is. So, g'day, Robbie.
Caught out looking at my phone. I was listening in, and I was just looking for that photo that Whitey was mentioning a moment ago. I was looking at Trent Wilson's Facebook because I know it's just there somewhere. But it was like Whitey and Cookie and Maddie and Brad and me and Gatesy. Who else was there? Bert. Hank. Yeah, Drake was there. Bert, Brett Lancaster. Brownie. Yep. Yeah, Brownie was there somewhere.
The lateral rat, Russell Van Hout.
Yeah, Russell Van Hout.
Yeah, Russ was there, and I was there with Langy. Langy and I were there following you guys around too. Yep.
You probably had a number Giro pinned on too, you two.
Great time. So
the Giro is certainly not. The Giro is not as fun as it used to be. That's for sure.
I remember when I rode it in '81. I happened to be the only Aussie there.
Here we go. You got 20 minutes, everyone.
There was one American. I can't even think of his name at the moment. We'll come to him in a minute. And that was it. We were the only English-speaking guys in the whole Giro. So
he wouldn't have understood you.
Oh well, you had trouble.
He must have left a lasting impression on you, mate. You can't even remember his name.
George Mount.
Well, John, in my first Giro in '98, the only person who spoke English in that whole bunch was Marcel Wood. So things have changed pretty quickly in those early 2000s with the arrival of all Australian professionals coming to us. But back in the late 90s, early 2000s, before the Giro was a World Tour event, not many of Australians went to the Giro. It's only really when it turned into a World Tour event, it became a lot more international. And Robbie spent 7 or 8 years there winning stages at the Giro. But before then, you didn't have to go. Teams didn't have to go to the Giro.
No. So, Robbie, I know we haven't got you for that long, and we really, before we lose you, we want to dissect that great sprint yesterday, because I flippantly said it reminded me, looked very Robbie McEwen-ish, his ride, but it was a great sprint from Caleb. I'd like to get your analysis of that final couple of K.
Yeah, well, before the sprint itself, what I really like to see, and, I was on the edge of sending Caleb a message, and I thought, no, just leave him in peace. But my thought was, after what we saw in the first bunch sprint, where Caleb just was way too far back and they just didn't recover from it and, just scraped in the top 10, my thought, if I was going to send a message, I was going to say, ride it like a bay crit. Some of these finishes in the Giro, when they come into these towns with just, a dozen corners in the last 3K, you've got to ride it like a criterium and just ride at the front. And when I then saw the footage, I was like, you beauty, he's riding it like a criterium. He used Jasper de Burst, his last lead out man. He was using him already, more than 2K to go, 3K to go, to just keep position through the corners and stay right at the front and sort of just wait for the others to go when they did. But he managed to slot his way in when it really counted and then get himself out in the sprint itself. But that thought of, dominate the front of the bunch, keep your position. If you're in front, you can choose what you do. If you get caught too far behind, there's no choices. You've just got to try and smash your way forwards, and it doesn't always work. So I thought that was a really good way to ride it, and I was pleased to see them do that. When it came to the sprint itself, Caleb just tracked Viviani, because they did a really good lead out on stage 2, the first bunch sprint, with Consoni, who has really come into, I think he's found his role as a lead out man with Viviani. He used to do stuff like ride his own sprint while Viviani was the other side of the road. He's been doing a really good job, and Caleb recognised that. He tracked Viviani, and then, once he saw Nitzela coming on from the left, and who made a really long sprint and a really good sprint, Caleb just waited till he was clear, slid in behind the wheels, and then just blasted on past him. Intrinsically, he's way faster than Nitzela and Viviani, and he just had to, get it right to get through the gap, and he did exactly that.
What about the clash he had with Tim Merlier?
Okay, I'll give you a pronunciation lesson. It's for everybody there. It's Tim Merlier. It's like the ear on the side of your head, Merlier, because he's Flemish. He's not French. He's not Merlier. He's Tim Merlier.
You told me that earlier today, and I've forgotten it already. So that's how good I am. but it was interesting. They hit pretty hard.
Yeah, it was a really important moment because, Sagan was on the left, Caleb on the right, and Merlier, he got in between them. And the mistake he made was basically stopping in the gap and not getting himself all the way through it, because he made an acceleration and he got himself in front of Caleb. And as Sagan just moved into the right, Merlier wasn't far enough in front of Caleb to make it stick. So he rode himself really well into the gap, but never really went through it. He got to the point of almost to the point of no return, but he got returned. Yeah. And Caleb bumped off him. Caleb still had a few centimeters on his right hand side to play with, but he bumped past him pretty well. And unfortunately for Merlier, he pulled his foot, dropped his chain, and didn't have a chance anymore. But I've been really impressed with him, and I expected him to do really well in the Giro too after watching him over the last couple of years.
I'm interested to see Tim and Caleb actually, head-to-head drag race to see, obviously they've both had different wins now, but from different situations, and they've both been ruled out of it for different reasons. So it'd be really good to see those guys just going head-to-head in one of these next sprint stages, although there are not too many in the Giro. So, looking forward to that, though.
Yeah, won't be many left, typical of the Giro. They have a few in the first week. Then you've got to survive a few mountain days and get another couple. But probably... I don't know, what is it, 10 or 11 days, and then pretty much the sprints are done. You've got to really hang in for a long, long time to get one more. But it'd be good to see them really go head-to-head. I still think Caleb is faster. I think the only guy in the peloton who is a match for Caleb when it comes to pure sprint speed is Dylan Groenewegen. I mean, there's so much more that goes on than just pure sprint speed, of course, but he's the only one. They're the two true out-and-out sprinters. But Merle is good. He dares to go early. He's really strong, and he can hold his top end for a long time. And he's here to stay for a while. Merle, he's good.
I think they've got 3 sprints between now and stage 14. So stage 13, I think, is the last chance for Caleb. I reckon he'll go after that, because then they've got a block of mountains. So I reckon he'll just stay till stage 13. I think they get three goes. And I look forward, like you're saying, to watch him and Tim Merlier.
Hey, there you go.
Going head to head, because they are the two quickest blokes here. But what about that last 20K? That was really, a bit like Amstel Gold. There's road furniture everywhere.
Yeah, when you come into these, particularly in the seaside towns in Italy, they're not built for fast traffic flow, and they're certainly not built for bike races. And it was really sad to see Dombrowski and Mikel Landa go down. Actually, didn't even hit the traffic island or the traffic signal. They hit the marshal who was standing in front of it. I don't know who hit him first and exactly how it happened. I haven't seen enough footage of it, but sad to see those two out of the race. We know that Landa broke his collarbone and a few ribs, and Dombrowski's been ruled out, as we know the term here in Australia, with an HIA, and he didn't pass the concussion protocol this morning, so he won't be starting today, which is sad for him. But at least he's got a stage win in the bag.
Yeah, extraordinary, isn't it? That John, sorry, Johnny. That stage win, because it was his first win in Europe, I think, since 2012. Baby Giro, he won the Baby Giro, which this guy's next American superstar on the way. In the mountain, one of the mountain stages he won in that race to take the win, he beat Fabio Aru, who obviously he's sort of come and then gone again, and maybe he'll come back again. But you would have picked Dombrowski back then to be the man that would have done better than Aru, and it hasn't been the case. It's taken him a long time. So got a feel for a guy. It's awesome that he can come away with a big win like that, and how disappointing to then be out, a day later.
Yeah, disappointing to be out, but it'll certainly temper the disappointment that he's got his stage win. You can imagine if he'd had another setback and not get that stage win already. But yeah, it just shows you how hard it is in the World Tour to come out of the under-23s where you're a superstar and make it happen in the World Tour. And, basically he's been in all the biggest races, and, you get opportunities, but you're up against the absolute best in the world, really mature and experienced athletes. But it's great to see him get that win out of the break. And, hopefully everything goes well for him. We'll see him back really quickly.
I saw popped up on Facebook or somewhere today that not only is it his first win outside of America in about 5 years, it's his first win outside Utah. So there you go.
Well, in future, watch out for him when races are at altitude. He obviously performs well at altitude, because that Tour of Utah is all above 2,000 metres.
There's a question for you,
There's
Robbie.
A good question there for you, Robbie, from Peter Varley. Has Caleb's style changed in the sprint? He doesn't look as low over the bars as he used to be? Well
seen, Peter Varley, because yes, that is the case. I was talking to Caleb, I think just in the summer just gone, or no, the one before actually, when he was back home in Australia the last time. And he said he'd been working on his sprint position and doing some wind tunnel testing and trying to find the ideal position where he could generate maximum power and maximum aerodynamic position. And he found that rather than having his nose rubbing on the front tyre like we'd become used to seeing from Caleb, that if he got himself a little more upright, he could generate more watts. He was less aero, but the gain in power outweighed the loss in aero. So it's about he was tinkering with what is the ideal between getting low and generating more power, and so he's come up with this very slightly more upright position, and it's working great for him. And what I've also noticed watching him sprint compared to say sprints watching him 2-3 years ago, his back wheel skips around a lot less now. Because you used to see him, any little tiny bump in the road, his back wheel was off the ground. It was skipping sideways. So he's eliminated that from his sprint. And yes, he is definitely in a more upright position.
Interesting, that question coming from Peter Farley. I don't know if you know him, Robbie. He's from Bryce, and only about a month and a half ago, we left Bryce and went on what he called a criterium tour for a few weeks. That's why he's probably so interested in hearing about Caleb's sprint. Not that Pete himself is a fast sprinter, but he went down to Melbourne and just raced every day a different criterium for a different club, ended up going up to Albury-Wodonga and all around Victoria and just doing as many crits as he could in a couple of weeks. He did his own kind of Bay Crits series, John, but just going to club crits over a couple of weeks. So good on you, Peter.
There you go. Well, I might even line up in one. You never know. Towards the end of May, I'm going to be in Melbourne for the commentary of the Giro on SBS. I was looking for gravel or mountain bike events. There aren't any in Melbourne. There's one in Albury. There's one at Yakandanda. That's a bit far away. Johnny, unless Jerry wants to take me out in the chopper, then But
we'll work on it. We
might
we have a Legends Bay Crit. We'll put on a Legends Bay Crit with you and Macca, and Macca won one, and Scotty.
I don't want to race against Macca. Macca's too fit. Macca does nothing but ride his bike.
But just talking about today's stage, it is a bit of a monster. We've got Cat 2 and a Cat 3 right in the middle of the stage. So it's 160k. I've got the little legend here.
Yeah, the final climb 16k.
16k, yeah.
So it's just under. It's just under 16k long. But I actually think, the name so rings a bell to me. I think I've ridden up it, but being the Giro and a mountaintop finish, I don't concentrate that much on those ones.
Well, Robbie, did you ride the Giro?
I think I've ridden it.
Did you ride it in 2002?
Yes.
Then you did race up it. That's the last time they raced up there.
What stage was it on?
It was stage 13. It was.
Oh no, I was gone.
Oh, you were gone? Already gone back.
I was already out of that one, so maybe I haven't ridden it. I recognise the name.
Yeah, well, so that particular, that was the last time. It was 2002. It was won by Julio Cuopio, who rode for Panaria.
Oh, Cuopio, the Mexican. Yeah.
Yeah, and the second in the stage was in his first full professional season riding for Mapei, Cadell Evans. And 3 days later, took the pink jersey. The next day, lost it again. So, bit of Aussie connection to the climb up San Giacomo.
So why is it in brackets? Why do they call it San Giacomo in brackets?
Well, because there's no town up there. So it's sort of really part of Ascoli Piceno. And it's the climb above the town, which is, there'll be something up there, but no town as such. There might be what they call a sanctuario, like an old monastery or something like that. It might just be a hill with just absolutely nothing up there, but something that provides a really good finale for a Giro stage.
Well, it's going to be definitely the GC boys will be out to play, but it's not like it's a category 2, so it's obviously not quite as steep as a couple of days ago. So
it'll be one of those 16k climbs.
The last 5k is 7.6% in gradient.
Yeah, so it's going to do some real damage. It'll do. I mean, okay, it's only in terms of mountain stages, it's not really brutal, but it'll certainly cause some gaps. And we already saw the other day in the rain, maybe the rain had a bit to do with it as well. Some guys don't like the cold and rain, but even that short climb to the finish, that already split them up a bit, and guys losing 11 and 20 and 30 seconds.
So we've got an interesting thing on the GC now. I was just looking at it before. We've got Damashi still leading, and then we've got some names we don't hear a lot of. Luis Vivaca, he's second at 42 seconds. Nelson Oliveira, the Portuguese from Movistar, we know a bit about him. Attila Volta from Hungary. What do you know about him? FDJ.
I just know he's from Hungary. That's it.
He's starving.
Like a lot of others, I just don't know anything about him. But I do know out of those guys that they were all in the break, and the break survived by a minute. And after the opening time trial of 9K, they all weren't that far behind, so they've all moved into the top spots in GC. But expect to see that really shaken up, and I think that the names at the top of the standings after tonight's stage will be the likes of Bernal, Vlasov, Evenepoel. The real favourites for this Giro will start to already stick out after tonight.
Yeah, you see them all there. There's not much between them, is there? I mean, you look at them, you've got Vlasov, you've got Evenepoel, only 4 seconds behind him, Hugh Carthy, another, I think, 10 seconds back, Bernal, 1 second back from him, Yatesy, 10 seconds back. So they're all pretty close. And still, Jai Hindley, he's not completely out. He had not a great day the other day, but he's still only like 40 seconds down on Bernal. So he's still not too bad.
No, he's still right in it. And that's the beauty of the Giro as well. You often see early on, and every year, time after time, people start to already call it in the first week and say, oh, this is going to be your podium, and this is the guy who's going to win it. He's flying. Look at him go. And they get into that last 4 days of the Giro and they just fall apart. And, somebody can still come from the clouds who's a couple of minutes down. You often see such massive time gaps in the mountain stages over that last sort of 5 days or so. So, Jai Hindley, hopefully for him, he's coming in, not, I wouldn't say underdone, but not at absolute 100% that the only way is down. And, there's such a long way to go.
And Nick Schultz is going pretty well too. He's only, I think, 10 seconds behind Jai. And he's, even though he's there to support Simon Yates, he's still looking quite strong. He's looking very strong, which is a good thing. But I like you just mentioned, Yates, I think he's there to ride for Yates. And as time goes on and he has to do some work then, and we get into the really highest mountains, then I think that'll sort of find him out and he'll just, do his role to the best of his ability, which is really good. Yeah. So you've seen a few Giros and you've ridden a few, Robbie. You've won like 13 stages in the Giro.
No, only 12. Only 12.
Only 12. Oh, I never exaggerate. But you have seen quite a few. I reckon this is the toughest one that I've seen. The final 2 weeks of this is just brutal. That's what they say every year. This is the hardest one there's ever been, especially the people who are in the race. They like to say this is the hardest one there's ever been. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. It's like they've just invented new roads. They've grown some new mountains. It's always hard. It is always hard. I've seen some whoppers, but that's the nature of the race. And, they just try to make it as hard as they possibly can because the attractiveness to the spectator is the drama of guys blowing up and looking like they're almost going to win and then falling apart. Okay, here's one for you, Robbie. Free Ranger. Is there a different feel, a different atmosphere riding the Giro compared to the Tour? It's a little more relaxed in a lot of ways. One is the crowds from start to finish aren't as big or intense as the Tour. Don't get me wrong, the Italians are really passionate about it, but it's not a summer holiday race where the entire European Union makes their way to the race because it just doesn't fall in the right time of year. So it's a little bit more understated, a little bit more relaxed around the starts and finishes. Depending on where you are, when you're right down in the south of Italy, it is like a mecca. It's unbelievable. The crowds down there and they just go absolutely wild. But you'll sort of see those big crowds really in the big mountains, and we'll see what it's going to be like this year. With the COVID pandemic and everything, I'm not sure, really how many people they're going to let up the mountains and be around the finishes. But in general, it is more relaxed than the Tour de France. There's something that around the race is not as intense, although the racing is equally as intense.
Johnny, and Robbie, you as a rider, you're seeing it from inside the peloton. I know when Dan Jones and I actually went over and worked on the Tour and then the Giro was far better to actually work on. It was much less stressful. They weren't as strict with protocols and parking and all that kind of stuff. You know that as well, Johnny, from the years. I asked Adam Hansen when
Johnny thinks that about every race. He said, "Oh, they don't worry about protocol, parking, and access. Oh, that's no anywhere. It doesn't matter to John."
Yeah, no, they do.
This is you, Pots and Kennels, Robbie McEwen. Pots and Kennels, mate.
At least I got a sticker on my car.
When Adam Hansen was doing his crazy stint of all Grand Tours back to back, 20 of them or whatever it was, straight, I asked him which one he enjoyed most, which one did he prefer the most, and he didn't really want to answer because he thought he'd upset someone. I said, well, okay, we'll put it to you another way. I said, how about, what are they like? If they were people, what would their personalities be? He said, oh, okay. And like straight off the spot, he said, okay, the Tour de France is a businessman, the Giro is a passionate sports fan, and the Vuelta is a sports fan, but at the end of the year on holidays. It's like, you know what? You summed it up perfectly. That's the feel of those three races.
There you go.
The Vuelta is someone on long service leave.
Yeah.
So I think we got another fan question coming up here, but here it is. Yep. Not going to give up on George Bennett.
Not really a question, more of a statement, but I like your thinking, Sheila. It's good you're not giving up on George, and we're not giving up on him. And hopefully with the weather conditions, hopefully today they have some nicer weather. George, he's not the most solidly built bloke in the peloton, even though a few years ago he sunny billed someone on the way up a mountainside in the Tour de France. But I think the warmer weather is a bit better for George, and hopefully the sun brings out the best in him.
Yeah, look, I was just looking at him. He's 3 minutes 10 down. And look, he had a really bad day, no doubt about that. But if his form's good and he comes right, as you say, the long way to go. And the last week of this race, there's some monster mountains which will suit George. And if he stays around about that time down, he could move from, where is he now, 30th, into the top 10 or even in the top half dozen.
Yeah, well, we'll find out pretty soon if he, what his sort of tactical plan is for this Giro. If he's really going to try and persist and try and ride GC, or just go, you know what, if it's not my day, I'll lose some time. I'll infiltrate a breakaway on a mountain day and go for a stage win.
Yeah.
Hey, not at the Giro, Robbie, but good to get your take on it. I don't know if you saw that Nasser Bouhanni has been given a 2-month suspension from an infringement that he did back in March in was it Chalot Pays de Loire.
Oh yeah, Cholet, yeah.
Yeah, put Jake Stewart into the barriers and he fractured his hand hitting the barriers at speed, and then they've retroactively given him a suspension from the 8th of April that'll end on the 7th of June. So they're starting with the Groenewegen suspension. Now Bouhanni, the UCI is starting to crack down a little bit. It's been a long time, really, if you go back that riders were getting suspensions. I know in Australia they used to dish them out a long time ago, but actual suspensions for infringements, it hasn't happened that much. UCI clamping down on it now.
Yeah, and it's not entirely a bad thing. I think if there's the precedent's been set with the Groenewegen Jakobsen incident in Tour of Poland last year, and if you are responsible, if you've done the wrong thing, if it's a disqualifiable offence and you've done the wrong thing and you injure someone, then I guess, you should have a timeout that's equal to the amount of time it's going to take the injured rider to come back. Yeah, and that's pretty much matched up with Jakobsen and Groenewegen. Jakobsen made his comeback in the Tour of Turkey, and Groenewegen 2 weeks later is that's when his ban was due to expire. So that pretty much matched up, and probably not a bad thing. It's a really blatant infringement. And Bouhanni, he's got his reputation against him as well. Yeah,
he's been copying a fair bit of flack on social media, and some of it a bit racist and not right. But just going back to Groenewegen, interested to hear your take on this, because there's no doubt that he deserved to be disqualified and to get a holiday. I thought 9 months was too much, because when you talk about how bad the injuries were to Jacobsen and they were life-threatening, they weren't all Groeneweggen's fault. That was the race organisers for a whole stack of reasons. One, downhill finish like that, and two, having the barricade set up that enabled him to go through a gap and hit the damn finish line structure. So, what are your thoughts on that, mate?
Yeah, well, the organisers were in a big way responsible, as well as the UCI, because they even if they say they have safety protocols, they don't enforce them, they don't check them, they just say, oh yeah, we've got them and think that'll do, and it doesn't do. So, there were the other parties at fault in the incident. So yeah, at the time I did think, geez, 9 months, that's massive. That is really long. I would agree with there had to be some amount of time to be served as a ban by Groenewegen, but yeah, 9 months was a long time. I thought maybe 6. I already would have thought, geez, that's long, and it would have been sufficient.
Yeah, would have put him into this season.
Even if people say, oh yeah, but it's over 3 months in the winter with no racing, whatever.
So you're coming down to Melbourne. So when do you start on SPS, Robbie?
Stage 14.
Okay, for the final week.
Yep. So I'll be in the studio with Keno. It's from the second last weekend, from the Saturday through to the following Sunday week.
Okay, sounds great, mate. Look, it's
We're
been
looking forward to
fantastic
getting in there and watching all the race. At the moment, I'm to be honest, I'm watching highlights because I can't stay up all night. I have to stick to my bedtime when I'm here at home.
I did it last night, mate. I did it last night. It was so late. I was cooked this morning when I had to get up.
Another question before you go, Robbie. Peter Varley, what are your thoughts on the moto guys standing in front of the traffic island with a flag and a whistle? Crazy?
No, not crazy. It's the way it's been done. They do it like that in the Tour de France, because if you are suddenly there and it's the traffic island normally sticks out in front of whatever type of signage they have on the traffic island itself. So it's good to have someone in front of that warning it's already here and start to split. It's just a really unfortunate incident where someone maybe wasn't paying attention or changed their line or got interfered with and couldn't avoid it anymore. But it's the done thing. You've got to have them in front of the traffic island. They can't stand there and hide behind the sign. But maybe, I think there's probably a better way to do it as well, without putting a person there that endangers that person, because that guy is probably out of the Giro as well.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, what do they, when they line up all of the marshals to give them their jobs, is it the short straw that gets that job standing in front of me? I reckon it would
maybe
be.
Maybe there's danger money. Maybe they say, like, who wants the extra 100? Anyone? Extra 100?
Seriously,
anyone?
I mean, I've been watching, as you say, it's been happening for a long while. The Tour de France, they do it really well. And a lot of the classics do. After a goal, they do it, and they need to. There's a roundabout every 200 metres.
Yeah, it's definitely the bum job.
It's the bum job. But I've been there. I've been standing on the side of the road watching them, and you see the guy, he gets all nervous. It's like a stage finish coming up. As the rider starts, and he starts shaking, and he's waving that flag and blowing that whistle. And I tell you what, he gets a volume out of that whistle.
In terms of crashes, mate, there were maybe 3-4 guys went down. 3 of them couldn't continue. So Landa, Bidard from Agiduer, Citroën, and also Dombrowski. So, 2 broken collarbones, a bunch of ribs as well with Landa, and then Dombrowski with concussion. So 3 guys from the one crash can't continue. So that was a shocker.
Mm.
Yeah.
Part of racing.
Pavel, what's his name?
Sivakov. He's got a broken collarbone as well.
He was earlier. He was about 9K to go or something
16.
like that. Yeah, 16K.
And he just, as he did, you saw him last year in the Tour de France. We had 3 crashes on stage 1 around Nice in the Tour last year. He crashed yesterday. He was really unlucky. He got squeezed, hit the gutter, and went down. But he broke his collarbone, jumped back on, rode right through to the finish, another 16K before saying shoulder's a bit sore.
Yeah.
Collarbone snapped in half.
Yeah.
He's tough. He's tough. He's had a rotten run of luck, so he's due for something good.
I remember following Stewie one year in the Tour when he fell and rode 80k with a broken collarbone. And I said to him after, I said, why did you keep going? He said, I wasn't sure it was broken. I'm driving behind the car. I could see broken. His shoulder was hanging right down. But he wanted to be sure. So anyway, some of these tough nuts.
just hanging on to a bit of hope, mate. Maybe heals himself before the finish. Yeah.
Righty, guys.
Yeah, Robbie, thanks heaps, mate. Really appreciate you coming on board, bud. Sorry I buggered it up. Only 12 stages in the Giro. And 12 stages in the Tour.
I thought maybe you were giving me that extra one I once got disqualified for, and they rubbed me out, and Fabio Baldato got it. I changed my line just ever so slightly.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember
that. No, but then again, that counteracts with the one you could have let Henk Vogels win when he was just jumped up the road, but you collared him.
I was thinking about that today. Actually, I was thinking about that one today. It's funny it came into my mind today. So he was up the road, but you know who let him go through the corners?
Yeah,
me. So, but what happened was,
you changed your mind.
But no. I mean, when it comes to it, you think we're going to catch him. I came out of Kirsipu's wheel. You got to ride your sprint. But when he was away, I thought, how unfortunate. It was Brett Lancaster who closed the gap, but he was riding for Brownie. So it was an Aussie off the front being chased by another Aussie, working for another Aussie, and it came down to it. And I thought Kirstipu was going to roll him as well. I think Hank ended up 5th or 6th. So we caught him. But you've got to ride your sprint, because the worst thing you can do, or the stupidest looking thing you do, is think, I'm just going to feather it. I'm going to hold back. And you get rolled. Your teammate doesn't win. You don't win. And someone else has gone. Lucky day.
Yeah.
Always ride it. Young riders out there, always ride a full sprint no matter what. Don't try and get clever or cute.
Exactly. I remember that stage well because we found a fantastic wine bar that night, one of the best in Italy. But there you go. There's another story.
Can't have been that good because you remember it.
I remember it because I lost my credit card that night. But anyway,
you've got to narrow it down a bit more. You've got to narrow it down more than that.
Anyway, Robbie,
right,
thanks
boys.
Heaps, mate. And enjoy the Gold Coast for another week before you come down to beautiful, warm Melbourne.
No worries. I'll bring some sun.
Okay, mate. See you, bud.
You certainly need it, that's for sure. I wonder if that movement he put on Baldato was much as Bettini put on Cookie that time when Cookie went straight into the barriers.
Oh, geez, I was there that day too. Another one I happened to witness. And
another great wine bar that night, mate.
It was, yeah. Ronnie Reed was on that trip, and he's the great wine bar finder. But yeah, no, that was a real bad one. I mean, that definitely cost the Cookie the stage win. He was flying home. But
yeah,
anyway.
Yeah. Hey, slight bit of tech talk. This may bore most people, but yeah, whether it's interesting or not.
Boring.
You haven't heard it yet.
Caleb, just a little thing when I saw today that Caleb's not riding the latest group set on his bike. So Campignolo's on the Ridley bikes for Lotto. They're running 12 speed, which everybody wants more gears, more cogs. It's great.
Yep.
But the new group set 12 speed Campeg doesn't have a 27 cog, which he really wants. So he's running the old superseded 11 speed, just so he can get his 27 cog.
Yeah, you'd think he'd be worrying about the 11 or even a 10 cog, but he's worried about the other end, the 27, because that doesn't hurt the legs too much. Now, what I want to talk about a couple of other things, but we'll get on to our great partners in Bike Exchange, and we'll just hear a word from them.
Look at this bike. You think it's just a bike, right? But it's not. It's a bike. 374 people are looking at. This guy, this girl, them, all looking at it. People from here, there, and wherever this is. People that are looking for a bike. Or just a piece of it. Amateurs, semi-amateurs, and pro-amateurs. This guy wants this bike, but with this crank and these bars. This could be the perfect match. but not this one. This girl has a bike to sell, and thousands of people might purchase it. Eyes on Bikes help grow small businesses. His, hers, yours, and the latest data and insights help those businesses keep moving. We are the world's #1 bike marketplace, with over 500,000 products and 900 brands, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
Great ad, great company. Now, for all of the, especially Victorian listeners and viewers, Saturday is the big Bike Exchange Green Edge sale. I think there might even be a little logo that Dan, if he's on the money, can put up in a second. But it's on Saturday at the Bike Exchange head office in, there we go, Outlet Team Issue Sale. Well done, Daniel. And it's in Buckhurst Street, South Melbourne. 10 o'clock, I'm pretty sure it starts. Goes through till 2. But there's some wonderful bike frames on sale. A lot of the Scott frames that were part of the team over the last few years. So they're brand new frames, but some of them 5 or 6 years old. So fantastic deals. We've sold quite a few, but still a few more to go in all sizes. Plus there's Scott running shoes, got sunglasses, those Syncross handlebars and stems, and those brilliant Syncross integrated handlebar stem pieces, worth about $800 normally. I think they're going for $200. I mean, it's some wonderful deals. So get down there on Saturday.
It's a clear out, mate. Stock take.
It is.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Hey, I mentioned the climb tonight, San Giacomo, and then the connection back to Cadell Evans, right, where he finished second on that stage in 2002. But I like to connect the dots, okay? And the stage winner was Cuapio, who's Mexican, riding for the Panaria team. Now, Brett Lancaster, 2004 Olympic Games gold medalist in the team pursuit, he went to Panaria the year after that, 2003, and then 2 years later, of course, won the prologue at the Giro d'Italia, riding for Panaria and put on the Maglia Rosa. There's another little Aussie connection through tonight's stage winner from 2002, the last time we went to San Giacomo.
Doing a great job. I hear you have a pic of Caleb's old man, Scotty. Now, there you are.
That is
Can we
true.
see it, mate? This is amazing. So, Mark there. Jeez. Which one's he, on the left or the right?
No. So, no, come on. Look at that beautiful bowl haircut of mine on the right-hand side there. So that's Mark.
Yeah.
And, yeah, wow. Look at, oh, God. My mother is responsible for that hairstyle. She used to cut my hair back then. And, obviously, the six kids in our family, she cut most of our hair. And that's how it looked. I don't know if that was in fashion or not. I doubt it. Now, Mark's an interesting one, okay? So Mark Ewan, who was an Australian junior team time trial champion in the under 19 level. And then he went into the army. And I used Mark as a bit of an example for years. So he disappeared. He went into the army, disappeared from cycling, and didn't see him again for many, many years until Caleb, came along. And I used to use Mark as an example because you can see he's a little guy, like his son. And coming through the under 15, under 17 levels, he would, I was a pretty mature young kid, right? So pretty big, and I'd win the sprints on the road races. Then we went into the under 17s, and he would attack on the climbs. I'd go with him, we'd get over the top, and then I'd beat him in the sprint. And then when he went into the under 19s, the climbs were longer. He was more mature, still only a little guy. He would attack on the climbs, and I'd struggle to go with him and then beat him in the sprint. And I remember thinking, years later, that if Mark Ewan kept riding bikes, he would have grown into the sport, and he was the sort of guy that would have, attacked on climbs and just ridden away, and there was no staying with him. He really had some ability. And it wasn't for years later that I went to the national championships on the track in Sydney, and this little guy came over to me and said, "Oh, hey, Scott, never met him before. I'd heard lots about Caleb. He'd been winning lots of races in New South Wales and et cetera, and around Australia in the age group categories. And this was under 19s at the Nationals on the track. And he came over and said, "Oh, my dad said to say hello." I said, "Oh, who's your dad?" He said, "Mark." I said, Mark Ewan. Mark Ewan. "Oh, your dad's Mark Ewan." Oh, I had no idea, right? I'm like, oh my God, please say hello. I haven't seen him for so long. And I just didn't make that connection, And Caleb's mum's Korean. I didn't make the connection whatsoever. And it was great to hear that, that Mark, had come back around into the sport through Caleb. And it's no surprise to me that Caleb is as good as he is, because his father, had he continued in cycling, I think really would have been able to go places as well.
Yeah, and no surprise, he's such a great young man, because his parents are absolutely gorgeous people. They used to come down to the Bay Crits each year and to watch him, and just the loveliest couple.
Former world junior champion in the Omnium as a first-year junior. Second year, decided that no, he wanted to be a road rider, so went to the Road World Championships, didn't do any track at all. Even as a reigning world champion, finished second at the Under-19 World Road Championships, and it was Matthew Morick that won it that year, that rides for Bahrain now, and then he came back a couple of years later and actually rode national track championships and put in a pretty decent individual pursuit, actually. So he's the sort of guy, if he wanted to go back to the track and maybe do the Madison or something at the next Olympics or something like that, I think Caleb could certainly do that.
Yeah, I don't think he's going back.
No, too much money on the road, mate.
I also noticed that in the news today, they announced, one of them yesterday, getting sleep deprived at the moment, but that the Women's Tour de France next year, and so ASO have announced that they're going to have a proper Women's Tour de France next year, starting on the final day of the men's race. So the men's race will finish in Paris, and that will be also the day one of the women's Tour de France.
Yeah, they've finally put some thought into how they do this. And it's interesting with ASO, the Tour de France organisers. It's not the first time it's happened, of course, right? We know if you go back into the 80s, I think it was 1984 through to 1989, there was a fully fledged women's Tour de France that ran in conjunction with the men's race.
Exactly.
They went. They had races up to, I think they had length, distances of up to 1,600 kilometres in overall tour distances. Yeah. Australian Liz Heppel was third in the overall standings in the 1988 edition, but then after 89, then things changed. So through the early 90s, they continued with a race that was kind of deemed as the Women's Tour de France, but it was of a different name. It wasn't ASO that were running it. They had another organisation running it. And over time, they actually had disputes with ASO because ASO actually hit them for copyright of the name and the title of the event. So it changed names several times. And it was actually ASO that made it more difficult for them to even associate their race as a Tour de France, because that was just for the men. And they didn't work with them at all through the 90s. It eventually sort of went on, and ASO. Exactly, and it evolved into different races, different names. Eventually, it got to, I think 2009 was the last edition of what you kind of would call a women's Tour de France, but it was really only through the 80s where it was a fully fledged race that was backed by the men's Tour de France organisation. So it's great that they've finally come around and are doing something for women's sport. Biggest growing sector of cycling at the moment. The mountain biking away from road racing is probably bigger, and e-bikes, but there's so many opportunities with women's cycling because they've been deprived for so long. So I think there's some really opportunities there, and it's good that ASO are on board.
Yeah, look, it's great to see that it's becoming so much more professional. There's been, I think, 3 teams now are paying the same minimum prize money, contract money to the women as to their men's teams. One being Bike Exchange. I think they were the second team to do it. So, which is absolutely brilliant, and that will now filter through. That'll become mandatory very soon. And it's the one thing ASO did come out and say that they're not going to try and do parity with the prize money because the sport's got to grow. He said, look, it has to become profitable quickly. If it's not profitable, they won't be able to keep it going. So it's got to pay its own way. So it's got to work into these things.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And just on the pay, you see Anna Vanderbregen, current world champion. She won Flèche Wallonne again for the 7th time, dominant rider within the sport. And she's quite happy to retire at the end of this year. simply, and I'm sure she would like to keep going, like Alejandro Valverde and these riders, they'd love to just keep going into their late 30s if they were getting paid enough. I think for Anna, who would be paid, perhaps the most of anyone within the women's peloton, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but, she'd be up there, obviously, but it's still not enough compared to what the men get. So for her to have a sustainable future, she needs to leave the sport to go and actually form, the second part of her career and, think about family and doing all those sorts of things. So, we'd be able to keep more riders within the sport longer if they were getting paid a little bit more, as it is with the guys. And your point, though, that ASO make about the commercialisation of the women's side of the sport, I think that's valid. Business is business, and no one's going to bankrupt themselves just to give the ladies, an opportunity beyond their means. So let's hope that can happen for sure.
Yes, Gary, he's just mentioned here back in 1987, Donna Ray Stalinsky, the VIS coach, and she's got her own little business down in Geelong. Matter of fact, set up right in the heart of the Geelong Criterium circuit, because I often wave to her as I ride past on Tuesdays, Thursdays with my little group. But she's a legend. And, she would have raced that one with Liz Heppel the year before. Liz was on the podium. Donna Gould was another one from South Australia. Her father was an old national coach of the national team. Pioneers, definitely some pioneers from back in the day. Now we'll wrap it up. We just I want to get your selection for today's stage, because it is a ripper of a stage. So, what do you think's going to happen, mate?
It won't be Lander. So he was the most aggressive of the leaders. So Ciccone and Lander were the two that hit out on the last hilly stage. And it is a real shame, actually, because, if you look at that day, you had Hugh Carthy, Lander, Bernal, and Ciccone were the four riders that jumped ahead of the rest of the favourites. Lander's out. So then it comes back to, Ciccone not really as a true favourite to win overall, but hey, he may prove me wrong. It's hard to go past Bernal. It really comes down to, I think, what they want to do. Do they want to take the lead? There's several riders from the breakaway from the other day that will probably fall away, including Damaki. I think they'll fall away if the pace really goes on that final climb. So really it comes down to, do Ineos... They've lost a rider, remember, with Sivakov out. They're now one rider less. Do they want to take the lead so early? So it may just come down to a bit of a tactical battle as they go up there. But I think Bernal from the other day, shows that he's the strongest of the rest. And we'll be looking forward to see what Yatesy does, Simon Yates.
I think Yatesy will go be very strong today. And I think I pick him to be the best of the GC riders, actually. But I don't think, I think a break will win today. I reckon a break will clear out. No one will be really chasing that hard. They can get over. It's a pretty big climb, that Cat 2 climb, the first one, but they can get themselves up over that. They'll be home and hosed.
Well, that's 10K, mate. That first climb is 10Ks long, and you can see even on the way there's those lumps on the way which are perfect as a launching pad to get a group up the road. And of course, at the moment, it's the Israel Startup Nation team that are leading with Damaki, so the pressure's on them to chase it down, not Ineos, etc. So it could be interesting. It could be, stage win.
They'll need a good little group. They need at least 10 to a dozen guys get up the road, strongish guys, and they have a big chance to stay away.
Yeah,
we'll see.
It'd be good to see, buddy.
Here you are, Alan Radkin. Will media coverage of women's cycling get better so sponsors get the exposure they need to make it profitable? Well, that's happening. I mean, the women's all the major races are now televised. The plan is for the women's Tour de France to be televised. Hopefully, SBS can do the deal with ASO and have that on our TV screens as well. I know that the women's Giro last year didn't do. They were supposed to supply the television feed, didn't do it, and so they were stripped of their world standing. And matter of fact, they've come back this year with the whole thing fully televised to try and get that the world ranking back.
And that was on during the Tour de France. So they're competing with the world's largest annual sporting event. There are things around scheduling and stuff like that. One of the things that, John, that I I've noticed over the years, and especially as a commentator, is that we have to just speak about the women's racing in a normal perspective and just normalize it. There's so many discussions around, saying little things like, "Oh, actually, the women's race was really interesting today." So what? Actually, it was interesting, meaning that you're expecting it not to be. We'll just treat it like a race. It's like women's tennis isn't the same as men's tennis. Women's football isn't the same as men's football. Just treat them both as what they are and commentate them for what they do, and just normalise it. I think that's the first thing we need to do to let it grow on its own organically.
Geez, Scotty, you have grown. That's fantastic to hear coming from you, mate. That's wonderful. And you're spot on, mate. You are.
Yeah.
You are spot on. Look, that was Whitey just apologising. His phone got cooked or something, and then he got called into a meeting. You've got sort of a bike race team to run, so I suppose. But it was great to have him on board as always. So I'd like to thank everyone for staying with us. Don't forget to register as a Detour viewer and watch it at youtube.com, the Detour podcast. Sign on. It helps us get the numbers up, and it's going fantastic. We really appreciate your support. Best of luck, Dan. I hope you're up and about for tomorrow night. I don't think our great viewing statistics will stay if Dan's out of the picture and it's just me hosting this damn thing. But Scotty, thanks again for coming on board. You're our most regular guest and or irregular guest, whichever one.
The most regular guest, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to tonight's stage. It's going to be a beauty, and we'll see you all tomorrow night.
Cheers, buddy.
This is the winning ride on the Tour de France. Bet your boots on it as Cadell Evans of Australia makes